Okay, good afternoon and welcome to today's event. Today we're covering a webinar on writing a winning bid from the Innovation Grant Mentoring Project at Norfolk County Council. I'm Laura Hill, Project Manager of the Innovation Grant Mentoring Project. And today we're going to be joined by two of our project mentors, Liz Flint and Colin Watling, who will be giving their expert advice. So first of all, a little bit of housekeeping on the event. Please note our event is being recorded and will be shared with you after the session, along with the presentations. We have quite a large audience, so we'll keep the cameras and mics off, but please direct any questions on the topics we cover in today's session into the chat bar. We may answer some questions as we go along if appropriate, but the majority will probably be addressed in our Q&A session after the presentations. But please do post your questions throughout the session as they come up. So to go through the agenda for the event today, firstly, I'll give you an overview of the Innovation Grant Mentoring Project and the support we offer businesses working towards innovation funding applications. We will then hear from our project mentors and business innovation experts, Liz and Colin, who will be talking about our main topic today, how to write a winning bid. We will then move on to the Q&A session and we'll close by 1:30. Okay, so thanks ever so much for joining our event today. I'm delighted to tell you more about the Innovation Grant Mentoring Project, which I run. Some of you will have already signed up to the project and registered, others may not have, but if you're interested in exploring innovation funding for your business, I would encourage you to register to the project to see how we can support your business in this area. We offer support to businesses considering or working towards innovation funding bids. The support is fully funded and will be extremely valuable to assist your business through the innovation funding journey. And we'll post a registration link in the chat bar. Please take a look at our webpage and the support, but I'll be going through what our project is all about. So our vision. Our project was set up at the end of 2020 to help increase the number of successful applications to innovation funding from businesses in Norfolk and Suffolk. Innovation funding is for researching and developing a new process, product or service through innovation funding streams such as Innovate UK. If you're successful in winning an Innovate UK grant, it's not just about the money from the organisation to help accelerate your development. It's all about the collaborations you may have in these projects from other organisations, and also then potentially the support to commercialise your development at the end of the research project. Innovation funding and winning innovation funding can deliver many benefits for your business. So our project and the support, who is it for? In terms of eligibility, we'd be pleased to hear from any business based within Norfolk and Suffolk from any industry sector. Whether you have an aspiration to start innovating, if you've already developed a plan maybe, we'd be pleased to hear from you. We're also very pleased to hear from companies who perhaps have put an application into Innovate UK or another innovation funding stream in the past and not had success. Don't be disheartened. It's not an easy process. And our partners have a way and a range of ways to support you towards a future successful application. So what does the project offer? Our project is running a series of innovation funding workshops and webinars with our mentors and coaches like we're running today. We also have fully funded one-to-one innovation mentoring and bid writing coaching, which is by application. This support is delivered by our team of experts who have had successful innovation funding and then gone on to successfully deliver their projects. The shared experiences and mentoring support offered, along with in-depth training on how to prepare and write successful applications, will not only assist you with the project you're developing now, but the skills will be embedded into your organisation and will be carried on to assist you in the future development projects. Our project is flexible. We work with a wide range of businesses at different stages of their journey within innovation funding. Our baseline offer are the mentor and bid writing webinars, which we run, such as today. They are designed to introduce you to some of the basics of innovation funding. When you feel ready, you can apply to the business panel for one-to-one mentoring or bid writing coaching. Your application will be assessed by our board that's made up of innovation and business organisations from across the region. The business panel will review your business case and status of your innovation pitch, and also the purpose of the project and also the panel. Their aim is to support you on the innovation journey. So you'll get personal feedback and their recommendations for your next step from your application. This could be either support through the project, so our mentoring and coaching, or support from one of our project partners, maybe direct to one of their support packages initially, or you may even have support from a partner and from our project to maximise your chance of success. From the project, we offer up to 20 hours of mentoring and up to 35 hours of bid coaching. Or it may be you don't require that level and need some top-up support, so we can work with you on that as well. So it might just be you need a few additional hours, a few hours around your application. But please note our bid writing coaches will help you on your application, coach you on how to answer those questions in the bids. We don't write the bids for you. That has to come from your business, but we do support you on that journey to applying for innovation funding. I hope this project support's of interest. Please register on our webpage and join our webinars in the future. And also, if appropriate, apply for the one-to-one innovation, mentoring and bid writing coaching support. But ultimately, we on this project want to support Norfolk and Suffolk businesses in the journey to achieve innovation grant funding success. So we'll now move on to the main part of today's session, writing a winning bid. I'll hand you over to Liz Flint and Colin Watling, who are on our team of project mentors. So if you apply for the one-to-one support through our project and successful, you could be matched with them. So thanks, Liz. Thanks, Colin. I'll pass over to you now.
Brilliant. Thank you, Laura. And I'm just going to share my slides in a moment. But first of all, let me run a couple of polls and ask you a few questions. So the first question, if you could just click the buttons when the poll appears, is whether you have ever applied for a grant from Innovate before. This is all obviously to help Colin and I to understand who we've got in the room, so we can tailor what we say accordingly. Okay, so interesting, I'm watching the results as they come in. 15 of you have responded so far and roughly half, just over half, haven't applied. Okay, they're starting to shift now, about 60% saying no. Okay. Lovely. Right, let's close that poll now then, Laura, and we'll move on to the second one, please. So the second question is, those of you who have applied for Innovate UK funding, were you successful or not? I'm skewing the results here because I've just responded yes, so I get to see the results. Okay, so 9 of you have responded, and it's roughly split 2/3 unsuccessful, 1/3 successful. That is not at all untypical. We're here today to help make sure that you improve your chances of success when you next apply. Okay, one final poll question then, if Laura can put the last one up, is whether you have ever collaborated with a university. Some of these projects are collaborative, some are not. Okay, 9 people responding, 12, it's 50-50 so far, that's really interesting. Okay, 15 people, 60% of you know. Okay, lovely, let's close that one. So that is now about 2/3 haven't collaborated with a university and about 1/3 have. Okay, thank you very much for your responses to those folks. That really does help us to make sure that we're hitting the right points as we go through this. Okay, so hopefully now everyone can see the slides. Can someone just shout out and confirm for me? Yep, that's a yes from Laura. Lovely, thank you. Okay, so probably quite helpful if you know who the heck we are. So Cullen, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there everyone. My name's Cullen. Don't worry about the pronunciation. I stopped correcting people a long time ago. So Cullen Watling, I know a little bit about grant application and bid writing. I started doing it maybe probably getting on for 25 years ago. And I've also worked for Innovate UK and a number of universities, so I have totally lost count of the number of bids that I've done over the years. So yes, I understand the process fairly well. I won't try and claim a particular success rate or anything like that, but certainly well placed to help you to understand the process of doing this, okay? Because the idea of your innovation and what you're going to do with it is important, but the process is what we're going to talk about today rather than the specific technology you might be involved in.
Lovely, thanks Cullen. Okay, and I'm Liz Flint. I've got a background in innovation. I've spent my career so far working at the point where businesses, universities and government all come together. I've worked for Innovate UK too, so I've been the person who's designed funding competitions, who has looked at the bids as they come in. I've been an assessor on funding applications, and I've, like Cullen, I've written loads of them myself. And I've been the custodian of big grants once the funding's won and we have to actually deliver the project that we've gone for. So between the two of us, hopefully there's some useful experience that we can share with you. So normally at this point, we would ask you to introduce yourselves, but the format of this meeting and the number of people doesn't really lend itself. But I would like you to take the opportunity to meet each other. So if you want to just pop in the chat who you are and what you do, so that you can get to know one another, because you never know, there might be a really useful contact sitting on this webinar. So I would encourage you to share a little bit in the chat while we're talking. But let me move on and start to talk about why we're here today. So it's all down to innovation. We're not just talking about generic grants today, we're talking specifically about funding for innovative projects. So people often use this quote that invention is about turning money into ideas and innovation is about turning ideas into money. So this is all about not having money to come up with great ideas and then sit on them, but how do you turn your brilliant ideas into the next product or service that your business is going to offer. So we're obviously talking about funding, and the point of all of this is to drive the growth of your business by having those new products and services that you can put out on the market and grow your business from selling. So by the end of today, our aim is that you will be in a position to win more funding and feel confident that it's worth you putting the time and effort into making a bid with all of that wonderful support that Laura just talked about from folks like us, that you'll be able to actually write fewer bids because you're writing better bids and they have a greater chance of success. So you're not spending time on bids which aren't going to succeed. And this will help you build a track record and build a network of partners to collaborate with. So we've got a lot to get through. We're going to gallop through some of this, but all of the slides will be available afterwards. And as Laura said, they are recording this. So we'll talk about how to get started. We'll look at how to pitch the benefits of what you're proposing, not just the features of it. So getting away from talking about the techie stuff into the benefits. We'll talk about what funders are looking for, how to set out your value proposition, and then we'll start talking about how you find the right partners and build a consortium for funding. We will touch on the university side of things, what they're interested in, and then we'll spend a fair chunk of time in the latter part of this talking about the bid process, how to make it run smoothly and avoid unpleasant surprises, and then what happens after you've submitted. So in terms of getting started, there are resources out there that can help you find grant funding. With Innovate UK specifically, you can sign up for Innovate UK's alerts, which tell you when a new fund has been announced. They will always run a briefing event, so you can sign up to go to the briefing events to understand the scope of the competition. There are networks out there, which include the Knowledge Transfer Network, which is funded by Innovate UK, as is what used to be called EEN and is now actually called Innovate UK Edge. And you will have people local to you in the county who work for those organisations, and again they can help you to identify the right funding and to find the people to collaborate with. But the really important thing is that you spend some time thinking about what it is you're trying to achieve and why. So the way I always describe this to people is if you were to sit and to write a little bit of a Gantt chart of the new products and services that you want to develop and offer over the next few years, the one that's on the top of that list is probably the one that you want to get to market in a few months. That's not the right project to apply for Innovate UK funding for. The timescales won't fit. So you need to be looking at the slightly longer term things that are maybe more ambitious, a bit more risky, but that you've got more time to develop. So have a think about that. Have a think about which are the ideas that you would like to turn into products and services. And then the really important thing when you're choosing your funding to apply for is it has to be a good fit. The assessors are really good at spotting when you've forced something that doesn't really fit into the competition, and that will impact your likely success rates if you do that. So we'll talk a bit more about that later. For now, I'm going to pass over to Callum to talk about features and benefits, and we're going to do the good old Chris Whitty next slide please thing. So forgive us if he keeps having to say next slide to help me click on.
Before, can you go back one? Sorry, Liz, to derail you there. This point about fits to call is really worth underlining a little bit. As the innovator themselves, you really love your technology, you really love your idea, and you want everyone else to recognise how amazing it is and how successful it's going to be. And there's a tendency to think that, okay, well, this call isn't quite right, but my technology speaks for itself, and therefore I will put the application in because everyone will see the brilliance of it. A fit to call is really, really important, and it can be really frustrating if you get caught in a place where I don't seem to be seeing calls that my technology fits for. I'll have a go at this. We will come back to that in a bit more detail, but I'd really want to stress that. You see it quite a lot, people saying, I'll just shoehorn this one in here, it'll fit. And then you just get disappointed when it doesn't work. Right, so, sorry Liz, we'll crack on. Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit of time on features and benefits, and apologies for the people that have had plenty of sales training or sales experience in the past, but it's worth spending a bit of time on this because, again, we see it all the time in grant applications that people major on the technology. They major on what makes their innovation different and special and how it all fits together and how it all works. And so they get into very technical feature-based language. And that, if you're only talking to people that understand your technology, that's fine. But the people that are going to assess and run your grant really don't. So they probably need to be told about benefits rather than the deep technical features. Okay. Next slide, please. So a very quick analogy there. You see it in systems engineering and sometimes in code, the analogy of a black box, okay, where something clever goes on inside the box, a signal comes into it, something clever happens to it, and the signal comes out again, but you don't know what's in it. I'm using that analogy because, you know, the customer, in this case, the grant awarding panel, just don't care about the technology. They see applications from all over the technical spectrum all day, every day. They see it from professors, they see it from multinationals, they see it from startup SMEs and all this kind of stuff. And they cannot be as deeply technical about your subject as you can. So the way they cope with that is they don't worry about it. Yeah, they cannot possibly be experts in everything, so they choose, by and large, not to worry too much about how the technology works. They'll never ask you to prove it. They'll never ask you to give detailed references of all the data you've got to support how it works or works. They will take you at your word that what you say works. And that, I think, is probably where Theranos went a little bit wrong a little while ago in the States. But the thing to bring from this slide, this diagram, is don't major on the technology. Okay, next slide, please. So the way to think about features and benefits, I think, is to think about the RS catalogue or any other technical data sheets that you might have seen for products or bits of software or things like that. So the data sheet is the feature heavy set with all the numbers. It's all the facts. It's how this bit of technology fits to this. It's about power supplies. It's about data rates. It's about material specifications and all that kind of stuff. It's the data heavy feature set of what your product is, what the technology is, and how it works. But a benefit's not like that. Okay, a benefit is more marketing speak. Okay, it's more about trying to persuade people without understanding what's inside the black box that this technology does something useful for them. Okay, so it's about speaking human to human, yeah, speaking to people that don't understand the technology. So think of it as more of a marketing approach rather than a technical sales approach. I always put this little question into my presentations where it's appropriate, which is what's the difference between sales and marketing? We'll have a Q&A on that now, but we don't have time. But basically, in marketing, there's less fear of rejection. And in sales, people will tell you they don't like your thing. And that's a difficult thing. And that's part of the grant application process. Okay, so think about features and benefits. Oh, we're going the wrong way. Brilliant. Okay, so there we go. Here's another way of looking at it. Okay, the feature there is spinach. Yeah. That's the feature, and it might have vitamins and it might do great things for you, but we're not worried about that. What we're saying is, what does it do for the customer? We're not interested in the contents of the can. We're interested in the effect of what we've got on the customer and how that makes them feel. Okay, so that's what that slide is about. Nothing to do with spinach. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here's a more technical example, and this is using a mobile phone. So on the left-hand side, we've got the technical features, and there's numbers in there, and they're testable, verifiable, checkable. There's data there. And on the right-hand side, the benefits, it's gone into marketing speak. Okay, it's gone into how the consumer operates the device, what it does for them, how it makes them feel a little bit. You know, we're using words like easy. You know, we're using words like, you know, unlock your phone fast without defining what we mean by fast. So engineering on the left, marketing on the right, features and benefits. Hopefully that's relatively straightforward for everybody. Okay, so begin to think now, when you're writing your grant applications, what are the benefits of my technology to the consumer, and for in Innovate UK language, what's the benefit to the wider society? Why would UK PLC, why would the taxpayer fund your technology? It's got to do good things for the whole of the UK society, environment, productivity, tax base, all these things. What are the wider benefits of your technology? Okay, so we're coming away from the detailed engineering. Next slide, please, Liz. Okay, again, if we had time, well, I might ask for a volunteer. You know, would anyone care to volunteer? Put your hand up if we can see that somewhere, to pick an object like a a pen or a mobile phone or your laptop or a coffee cup and give me a feature and give me a benefit for each one of those. You got any volunteers? It's all gone a bit quiet. Okay. So I've got one. Hugo, unmute yourself and give us a run.
I've got a kind of keep cup here, a reusable coffee cup.
Yeah.
So I suppose a feature would be that it's reusable, I guess. Is that would you say that's a feature, or would you say something more technical? So perhaps a locking lid.
Perfect. Yeah, a locking lid is definitely a feature. Being recyclable or being reusable is a bit of both, isn't it? Really. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So the
Any other volunteers?
Benefit of that, I suppose, is that your coffee doesn't go everywhere while you're walking.
Absolutely right. There's the benefit. So the feature is the lid, and then its locking mechanism, and the benefit is you don't get coffee down the front of your shirt. That's exactly right. Good. Any other volunteers? Or have we got that point? I think we've got that point. Brilliant. Okay, we'll crack on.
Right, so it's back to me for this bit then. So we're going to talk a bit about the different funders and what they're interested in, and then we're going to dive into Innovate UK. So the first thing to say is this is really complicated. This diagram has become slightly famous since it was produced, 5-10 years ago now. It attempts to map part of the innovation ecosystem, that there's businesses, there's universities, there's the government, there's all sorts of support mechanisms. This programme that you're part of today is one of the support mechanisms available to help innovation happen and help more innovative products and services reach market. The point being, you don't need to worry about all of this. It is really complicated, but there are people out there who have the job of understanding this, and those are the folks we mentioned earlier, Knowledge Transfer Network and Innovate UK Edge. So all of the different people who are offering funding are different. So they will have the stated aims of what they're trying to achieve, and they'll try and be as clear as possible about that in the specifications that they put out, offering the opportunity to bid for funding. But there are always things that underpin that. So as an organisation, the organisation itself might have aims which may or may not be stated in the funding document, for example. There may be things that are really more important than others out of the things that they have said are their priorities. And you can't always tell. So sometimes you have the opportunity to get under the skin a little bit of what that funder is looking for, and again, that's where some of the folks in the networks can help you understand, for example, what Innovate UK are after. So it's really important to use every source of information that you can. So don't just wait for a call document to come out. Get to understand the funder, get to find out what they might be thinking about running in terms of funding over the next year. Because once the call comes out, the clock is ticking for you to get a consortium together to write your application to a good standard and get it submitted. So if you have an idea of what that funder might be coming out with over the next year, you can start to plan ahead. You might even be able to influence. Back when I worked at Innovate UK, I was what was then called a lead technologist in the energy team. And we did used to take soundings from the industry, find out what the barriers people were experiencing were when they were trying to develop their new products and services. We would never obviously create a funding competition in response to what a company said, but we would take the breadth of views across the industry and across policymakers and government and try to synthesize all of that and think about what would be the best use we could make of the money we had available. If we had 2 million to run a competition, where should we target it? So there are sometimes opportunities to get involved in those sorts of consultations. And every time a competition is launched, there's always going to be a launch event. So make sure you go to that, because you have the opportunity to ask questions of the people who've put together that funding call. OK, so that helps you get under the bonnet of what they're looking for. As it says there, always make sure you understand the process really thoroughly. And Callum's going to talk some more about that later. Is there anything you want to say on that point now, Callum, or are you going to save it for later on? Oh, you're muted, I think. He's on mute.
Yeah, here we go. Brilliant. I wonder how many times that has been said in the last couple of years. Anyway, there's a nuance to this grant application game. The written documents that come out of central government, they come out of Innovate UK, they come out of various places, are all written in a certain way. And there's a lot of stuff in the background, a lot of subtext that you won't pick up the first time you read any of this documentation. You won't pick it up the first time you do a grant application. You have to immerse yourself really in the way, in the language of the funder, in the language of the grant competitions, and really understand it. This is why, you know, you'll find some companies are serial grant getters. Yeah, once they've cracked the language, once they've cracked the code, they can go over and do it again and again and again with high success rates. But if you're new to this, it can be very difficult, and it's often not obvious, I think is probably the way I'd put it. Is that fair, Liz?
Yeah, I think so. And of course, this is why this innovation grant programme exists, to help you to have that extra support from people who have previously cracked the code, so that you can improve your chances of success. Okay, let me spin on then. Let's talk specifically about Innovate UK. That's what we're here to focus on. So really, there are 4 main areas that Innovate UK cares about, and they apply these 4 tests to pretty much everything they do. So whether they're trying to work out whether they should create a new catapult centre, which is a huge investment, that's a £50 million investment to create a new catapult, or whether they are looking at a series of applications into a funding call, these are the fundamental tests that are being applied. They'll apply these tests before they issue the funding call as well. So you need to always bear in mind that these are the things which are at the core of whether something gets funded or not. And in the next slide, I'll take you through some more detail about the questions you'll be asked to answer, but these are the fundamentals. So first of all, when you're asked to make the business case, they need to understand the size of the market. Don't ever fall into the trap of saying things like, well, the global market for aircraft is this many billion, so that's the size of the market for my widget that's going to go on a tail fin. Okay, that's not useful information. What you need to do is you need to look at the market. You need to break it down. There's a phrase called total addressable market. There's all sorts of resources you can find on this, but you need to break down what's okay. Global market for aviation, fine. Right, how many planes are bought each year? So how many tail fins need to be produced? Who's producing the tail fins? How many customers are out there? And start to break it down into the specific of who you're going to be selling to and how much they spend every year. Then you need to start to think about, well, okay, of that total market for things that are part of a tail fin on an aeroplane, how much of that market is it realistic for me to take? Who is currently selling into that market? How much of that realistically can I disrupt? So you need to start to dig into that, because what they're looking for is whether the amount of funding you're requesting versus the size of the market you can address, and therefore the potential growth of your company, is appropriate. Because if realistically, actually, there's only a £200,000 a year market there, and you want £500,000 for your innovation project, they're probably going to say, well, you know what, the return on investment to UK PLC in terms of the additional corporation tax you're going to pay on your increased profit doesn't really offer value for money against us spending £500,000 of taxpayers' money on this project. So they're looking for those sorts of ratios. There's no set number. Don't get me wrong, there's no set number they're looking for, but think about how much grant money you're asking for versus the realistic market size and potential growth of your business.
Liz, can I just interrupt your flow there a second? What that question also is about is how close you are to market, how readily you can get your product out there once it's been developed. And we'll talk about having customers in consortia a little bit later on, but the idea is that what they're looking for is a project that is very nearly there, and all you need is a little bit of money to get it over the line, and then you've got a line of customers already queued up to actually come and rip it out of your hands. That's the story you're trying to tell in that area. Okay.
Yeah, which is a beautiful lead into the remaining points on that slide, because the collection of those is exactly what Colin's just said. So they're looking for something that's going to be distinctive and world leading, and where the UK can be in a strong position on the world stage if you're successful in commercialising this idea. But they also don't want it to be too early stage, as Colin's just said. They're not looking to fund something that's a very early stage research project, for example. They're looking to fund something which is in the middle of its development path, and there's a clear route for how you're going to get it to market and how long that's going to take. And the final test is, why should taxpayers' money be spent on this? Have you exhausted other options? Why can't you raise investment? Why can't you use your own money? Okay, so these are the fundamental tests Innovate UK applies to everything. So what does that mean in terms of a proposal? So these are the key features of a good proposal. I'm going to talk through each of them. Now, there's a great document that the KTM produced a while ago, which is called the Good Application Guide, and we'll make sure that there's a link to that or a copy of it when you get the materials after this programme. So you'll recognise quite a lot, hopefully, of what I'm going to say in that document, because it's good stuff. So alignment, well, that seems obvious, doesn't it? But remember, as Colin said earlier, it's very easy to convince yourself that your project is a fit when it isn't really. And part of that is the point that we both made earlier about getting under the skin of what they're looking for in the competition. You know, sometimes the use of particular words, a word might mean something in sort of common parlance, but mean something a bit more specific in a particular industry. So try to understand how language is being used. Innovate do their best to make this clear, but there are always nuances and subtleties, as we said earlier. So read the briefing document really carefully and be sure you're in scope. And the reason for that is if the assessors think you're not in scope, they won't even read the rest. All of your effort will have been wasted. The scope question is a pass-fail. And if you're ruled out of scope, they won't score the rest of it. You get 0 points. Okay, so this is really important. Don't skimp on your thinking about this. Make sure that you're being really specific and clear in the way you write your scope section to present back to the assessors how you fit. So as with anything else, it's like answering the exam question. That's what you have to do in proposals. It's like writing a job application. You know, you sometimes get those covering letters come in, don't you, where you can see that the applicant has read your job description really carefully and they're reflecting your use of language and the things you've asked for in their application. It's the same when you're writing a grant. So make sure you use clear language, use the terminology that's in the competition briefing document. Avoid using jargon. If you use an acronym, explain it. Remember, the assessors won't necessarily be experts in your area. That does vary by different competitions. Some competitions are wide open and you can put all sorts of different projects in from different sectors and you will get generalist assessors. Some competitions are more sector or technology specific and the assessors will have deeper expertise, but don't assume that you're writing for an expert. Point 2, innovation. Seems obvious, doesn't it? There needs to be innovation in an Innovate UK bid, but you'd be surprised how many people fail to describe the innovation in their project, or actually really they just need some help with marketing, and that's not an eligible innovation project for Innovate UK. So you need to explain how your idea is going to develop and deliver a step change. Doesn't have to be completely new to the world. It can be applying an existing technology in a new sector, for example, and it can be a technical or a commercial innovation. But you need to be really clear about what is new and the step change you're going to deliver. You also need to show that you've got freedom to operate and that, you know, Innovate UK's investment of taxpayers' money in your project won't then be wasted when you try to go to market and find that you don't have freedom to operate. So again, don't make wild claims. You need to be able to substantiate what you say, but do some homework. Have a look around at what's out there. If you're claiming what you're doing is novel, make sure you've done a bit of Googling. Make sure you've used a SPASnet to see what patents have recently been filed in the area you're working on. So make sure you can substantiate your claims. You know, we've all seen as assessors bids come in that say, this is the most amazing thing, it's brand new, no one's ever done it, it's going to change the world. And you think, that sounds pretty familiar to me, actually. And you go and have a look and there's a patent from 1953. Colin and I, in fact, did recently have that experience, actually, with some bids we were assessing. So you do need to put some time and effort into explaining this. Don't ever think it's taken as read that what you're doing is innovative. Third part, a strong business case. Now, one of the common failings with Innovate UK bids is that people focus on the innovation and to some extent on the technology, because depending on the competition, you will need to talk about technology and research and development. They major on that. They spend a lot of time on it. They do a brilliant job of producing technical appendices and that sort of thing, and they use the full word count. And then when they get to the business bits about the business case and the value proposition, they have run out of time a little bit. They don't use the word count properly. They don't make use of the appendices, because people forget that there's equal weighting. There are 10 questions in an Innovate UK bid and they have equal weighting. Okay, so you can do the best job imaginable on the innovation and the R&D sections, but if you don't spend sufficient time and attention on the business case and the value proposition, you're not going to get through, because you won't get enough points on those sections to put your bid up near the top of the list. So they're looking to see whether you understand the potential market. Okay, so as I said earlier, don't use, you know, overblown numbers because you think big numbers are impressive. What's impressive is a real grasp of the potential market for your project. So an ideal response explains why the market need exists. So what's the driver for demand? What's required to meet that demand? Why it doesn't currently exist, and how your project addresses that. Okay, so a clear link, a golden thread from what the need and demand is, what's missing to meet that demand, and what you're going to do to meet it. Okay, and remember, this is about pull from the market, not technology push from you. That's an area where actually academic organisations, when they're involved in bids, often fall down, because they're talking about how brilliant the technology is and how, of course, everybody's going to want it because it's brilliant. They're not talking about what is the unmet need in the market that I'm going to address. Okay, so once you've done that, you then need to talk about how you're going to address that market, breaking down the market into a realistic target. You also need to explain, obviously, how you're going to make the product, how you're going to supply it to customers, whether that's business to business or business to consumer. Okay, so be realistic and make sure you've properly thought it through. That links into the value proposition, because market demand will come from having a convincing value proposition. And this boils down to what Colin was talking about earlier with features and benefits. People buy what the technology does for them. They buy the output of the black box. They don't care what's in the black box. Okay, so making sure that you are careful about how you understand the problem you're addressing and the needs that the market has is key. There's a great tool that the Design Council use, and if you Google it, if you Google Design Council double diamond, you'll get a diagram which is 2 diamonds. The point of it is that each diamond represents, first of all, a divergence and a broadening of an exploration and an understanding, and then a narrowing down and a focusing. The first diamond is about the problem, and the second diamond is about the solution. Most of us will jump straight to looking at solutions without fully exploring the problem that we seek to solve. So I would really recommend thoroughly exploring the problem that you think you're solving and testing your assumptions. Is that really the problem that's out there? Because if that isn't as much of a problem as you think, you produce the solution and no one will buy it. Okay, so the value proposition needs to be solid. And that helps you to understand your potential customers. If your project succeeds, you know they're going to want what you've produced. There is also actually a link in the document we'll send to you, which is called the Design in Innovation Guide, and that will help you to work that through. Okay, so developing a convincing value proposition is about being clear about who your target customers are, what problem you're solving for them, how easy or difficult is it going to be for them to adopt your solution. Moving on to the R&D plan, and I'm conscious I'm rattling through this because we're tight on time. So you need to explain exactly what you're going to do. You need to break it down into work packages. You need to be clear about which partners are going to be involved in each, what's the time scale, how much effort is involved, and what are the milestones and deliverables. So the best way to do this is in a Gantt chart as an appendix, and we'll do a poll question in a minute about whether you've done those before, but we'll skip on to the rest of the bits on this slide first. So it needs to be thorough and it needs to be well thought through. Right, consortium. Oh, we hear this so much, don't we, when investors are talking about how they invest in the team, not the product. It's a bit of a cliche, but there is some truth in it. The assessors want to see that you have thought about who are the right people to bring this product to market. If it's just you, you need to really explain why you can do everything yourself. If there are other people involved, if your thinking is, well, we're going to need to work with suppliers and customers, but we'll do this project first, have a good think. Could you bring them in as partners? Could you have customers as part of the project? Because you've got a pretty solid chance that you're addressing the right needs and people are going to want to buy what you've produced if they're involved in its development. Similarly with your supply chain, you want to know that the supply chain can adapt to the innovation you're developing and produce what you need to the right standard. So think about bringing them in. You do have the option with Innovate UK funding to bring people in as partners or as subcontractors. Be wary of putting lots of project funding through to subcontractors. Innovate UK don't like that. They will want to know why they're not a full partner. Part of the reason for that is financial, because subcontractors get their costs 100% paid, whereas partners quite often are expected to provide match funding. So Innovate are quite rightly a bit suspicious if they find that the lead partners not using a huge amount of the money themselves and most of the money is going through to subcontractors, because they'll wonder why. So just be aware of what value that partner's bringing, how core it is to the delivery of the project, and consider making them a partner. So the last couple of bits, a clear need for support. This comes back to that fourth fundamental question Innovate UK ask. Why is it now? Why is it this project? Why can't it be funded otherwise? And usually this comes down to risk. So you need to be talking about, this is too risky for commercial investors to put up the money because it's not quite close enough to market yet. Your R&D budget is already committed to the first project that you need to bring to market, which you're doing under your own steam in a shorter time scale. This is a longer term, riskier, but potentially much more beneficial project with a greater upside, but it needs some public support to get it over the line. And finally, risk. Remember, risk isn't bad. Again, those of us who've been assessors have seen people produce a risk register where they claim risk is zero. No, it's not. It's never zero. Even after mitigation, it's never zero. So for an innovative project, there's going to be some risk. Of course there is. If there's no risk, why would Innovate UK fund it? If there's no risk, it's a purely commercial transaction and somebody will put their money in knowing they're going to get their money out and a good return. So we do expect to see a decent amount of risk in an innovation project. The important thing is that you've thought it through and you show that you've thought it through. So you've produced a risk register that covers all of the different types of risk, that you have assessed the level of risk accurately, and then you've thought about the mitigation and you've looked at what the residual level of risk is afterwards. So at this point, I'm going to ask Laura to run a couple of polls for me. So first of all, quick poll, have you ever written a detailed risk register? Yes or no? Colin and I are probably really skewing the results here because we're both answering and the answer is yes for us. Okay, it's about 50.
I've deliberately not answered. Okay.
Okay, so it's leaning towards no. Okay, so that's something that the coaching support will help you with. Okay, because you need to do a good job of this. Okay, next poll, please.
And to underline Liz's point there, you can get as many marks for your risk register as you can get for your innovation section in that application. Okay, so the innovation is what you care about, and the risk register feels sometimes like an administrative burden that you don't want to spend time on, but they're equally weighted, or can be equally weighted. Everything could be brilliant in the application, and then the risk register could be weak, and that could lose you enough marks to get your product unfunded. Okay, so it's really important.
It is, and we've got the project plan Gantt chart poll going here. So more of you have done a project plan before. That's great news. I would say with Innovate UK, you need to be conscious of the level of detail that you're doing this to. They need to show that you've really thought it through. Again, as assessors, we've all seen a Gantt chart that's just got 6 lines on it, got no milestones. Someone's just cobbled it together in the last 10 minutes before they submitted the bid. You won't get good marks for that. Okay, right, let's rattle on. Thank you for your participation in those, folks. We talked earlier about stuff being at the right stage of development. Innovate UK like to fund the stuff that happens in the middle, and they like to see it being done in collaboration. So technology development, demonstration, piloting, scale up. Okay, if it's very close to market, they expect industry to pay for it themselves. And if it's very early stage, that's really mostly a job for the universities funded by the research councils. The key thing with all of this is you've got to make it compelling, make it exciting, make the assessor want to read more and learn more, okay? And a way of doing that, a way of describing it, is this idea of a golden thread that runs through the whole application. So you're not writing the sections in isolation from each other. There's a theme that runs through, and there's a style to your writing that makes it easy to read, compelling and interesting. Value for money is an important part of making it compelling, because you can be the best writer going, but if the return on investment for the taxpayer is not there, it won't get funded. And as we said earlier, you need to make sure you've got evidence of the pull from the market and to have really thought through your value proposition. Track record of your consortium matters as well. So including sort of pen portraits of the people involved. If you have the opportunity to attach CVs as an appendix, then do so. So make sure it's clear why this is a credible consortium. Okay, Colin, do you want to pick up from this one and then do the 9Cs bits? You've just muted yourself. There you go.
Okay, so we've got an idea of what we're going to make. We've got an idea of the process. We've got an idea of how it's going to end up as a finished article ready to go to market. How do you now convince the assessor that that next bit is going to be easy? Now, once they've paid for the R&D and the R&D is done, how do we convince the guy marking the exam that it's going to pass the commercial test? So one of the things we challenge people with quite early on in the grant application process is, why would anybody change? Yeah, the world works fine without your innovation. Why would anybody change? An example I use there is if you came up with an innovation that would make the fertilizer industry 2% more efficient, that would be massive. You know, the fertilizer industry is a multi-billion pound thing. I think 20%, 10 or 20% of all the gas we dig out of the ground goes into making fertilizer. If you could make it 2% more efficient, that would be amazing. But if all they had to do was to build completely new fertilizer factories in order to do that, it's not going to happen, because the billions of pounds that have been invested in those massive factories can't be written off. You can't start from a blank sheet of paper. So why would anyone change to using your innovation? Okay. The compelling reason it should be funded is more to do with the wider benefits, so the societal benefits, the benefits to HM Treasury, all those things. Right? You need to leave the assessor with the impression that they'd be foolish not to fund this. yeah, because it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it will do such good things. One of the really good things that Innovate UK and other funders are looking for, again, this is the subtext, this is not written down, is the need for good PR. Yeah, the funding body really likes to see good case studies and good news stories in the media saying we funded this project and this business is now growing really, really well. They want to see that. So some things get funded that are, if you like, photogenic. If you can make your innovation proposal look a bit more photogenic, and the people reading the application can see the case study and the PR coming out of the back of it, look at this problem we're solving, that's a really compelling reason. And focusing on the need that it meets. There must be an untapped need, there must be a pain point, there must be something really, really difficult or resource intensive or damaging to the environment. Focusing on what exactly the unexpressed need is out there for this, okay? And that answers the route to market question as well, okay? A good way of looking at these different impacts on different stakeholders is the next slide, please, which is this 9 C's diagram, which you may or may not have seen before. So these are all the different people that would be affected by your innovation coming to market, okay? And these different people want to see different benefits, okay? So that's a hard part, isn't it? A small application form is looking at all these different people around your innovation, all the people that will be affected by it, and getting the right benefits in the right order for each of these. Looking at time, I won't spend too much time on each box, okay? But this will all come out to you in the slide pack, okay? So if you look, for instance, at your commissioners, let's say anyone who's worked in the built environment, anyone who's worked in architectural construction knows that if you've got a better widget or a better thing for construction, the people you need to sell it to are quite often a long, long way from the people that are actually going to do the hands-on implementation on the building site. So let's say you've got a better tap, the guys you're going to have to sell to are architects, not plumbers. Okay, so thinking about the way that the supply chain works in your particular industry, who needs to be convinced? Go to the bottom right-hand corner of that diagram, and there's a competitive landscape. Quite often we see in applications for funding, I have no competitors, it's completely unique. Well, hang on. People are solving the problem in other ways. It might be more difficult, it might be more time-consuming, more resource-intensive, but right now people are doing the job that your innovation will help to do. So when you bring your new thing to market, there'll be a whole bunch of competitors around it, okay? And if some of these people are very, very big, what's the easiest way of protecting their market share? They can afford bigger lawyers than you. And that's why your IP is really, really important to answer that competitive challenge. Let's do one more. Let's look at champions. Okay, so who are the people that are going to make a big noise about your innovation? Who are the people that are going to say, right, this is what we want? Who are going to push it through on LinkedIn? Are going to like it? Are going to post about it? Are going to really enthuse about it and get people in your industry or the industry you're targeting to begin to move with you. Now, these are really important to have on board. And if the competition asks for letters of support, or even if it doesn't ask for letters of support, if you can get some serious champions to line up behind your innovation and say, UK PLC would be well advised to actually do this, that's not a bad thing at all to have some champions on your side. Okay.
Brilliant. So we would suggest that you spend a bit of time mapping out those 9 C's around your potential projects, which links in with value proposition. Now, I'm not going to do a mini session on value proposition design. This would be a whole webinar in itself, but I've put some stuff in here so you've got some resources. Okay, so this is a thing called the value proposition canvas. It was developed by Strategizer, and there's a YouTube video linked there in the slides that will help you to learn how to use it. And if you just Google value proposition canvas, you can access all the Strategizer materials. Fundamentally, it's about looking from your customer's point of view, putting yourself in the customer's shoes. They are in the red circle on the right, you and your product are in the green square on the left. The trick with this is pretend the green square on the left does not exist to start with. Ignore what you offer, what your project's going to do, and put yourself in the customer's shoes. What you do is you think about, what does that customer need to have done? What really annoys them? What winds them up or gets in the way of them getting stuff done? And what are the outcomes and benefits that they want? Only when you've done that do you look at you, which is the green square, which is then looking at mapping what you offer, what your project's going to offer, and how that can relieve some of those problems and challenges that the customer has, and how you can create value for them. You map those across and you look to see how good a fit you've got. So again, we'd recommend that after this session, you spend a bit of time looking online at the value proposition canvas, have a watch of that video, and then have a go at doing your own value proposition. There's an example online if you were to Google value proposition canvas Tesla, which works through an example using Tesla cars. Okay, so Cullum, over to you for the process side of things.
So we have been talking about how to construct a narrative arc, how to make people want to believe in your product, how to make people understand where it fits into the marketplace, and all those kinds of things. That's all quite ethereal stuff, and it's all about presentation and verbiage and getting people to read what you've written and really get behind what you're doing. Now we're going to come off that and we're going to get into the nuts and bolts, the fairly boring bit, okay? But process in grant application is really, really important. What we're trying to do in the next section of this is to avoid you being in a position where everything is rushed. You're working till midnight on the last day of the application, and you are spending your resources on the wrong things. So what we want to do is get you maximum marks in every single box. And the way we do that is with a thorough process. Okay, so the first thing you're going to have to do is construct a consortium, because the Innovate UK process really does favour collaborative projects. There's a whole load of history in the reasoning behind that, but the majority of projects are now collaborative. It's either with you and other industrial partners or with you and an academic institution. It depends on the competition you're going for. Okay, so when you go out and find these partners, one of the best places to go is every competition has a launch event. They used to be physical, they're increasingly virtual now, but all the different people that you could partner with are quite possibly going to be there. So I would always encourage you to go along to the launch events. Use the external and internal help, the KTN, the Innovate Edge, all these people. If you literally ring up the right person in KTN and say, look, I'm looking for consortia partners for these sorts of things, they are paid to go out and help you to find partners. If you have to pick up the phone to someone you've never met before and say, would you like to join me in an Innovate UK proposal, you'll be surprised how effective that is, because quite a lot of people want to do these things. But the most important thing you're looking there for is that your consortium partners are totally bought in to your innovation and to this process that we're going to go through. The worst thing you can have is a consortium of people who say they are going to do a bunch of things by a certain time, and then that doesn't happen, because if you're the lead applicant and you need all that buy-in, all your work is wasted if your consortia don't come in behind you. The key to ensuring that buy-in is to really understand what's in it for each of your partners, what they can do, what they can't do, what's easy for them and what's very, very hard for them. That's particularly relevant to working with academia if you've never done that before. There are things that universities can, and there are things that universities absolutely cannot do, and it's important to know that before you ask them for things like that. Next slide, please, Liz. Okay, so the deadline is fixed. Once that's gone, it's gone. You can't submit late. There is absolutely no point. There's no going around the buoy a second time. You're done. Okay, so everything you do will slip. Yeah, things will be late. Things won't be written. Documents won't come in, but the deadline stays fixed. So that you really need to think about that. I always recommend you work backwards. You work out all the different difficult things you've got to do, all the different stages in your bid writing process, and you work back from the deadline and you build yourself a timetable. And I'll show you an example of that in a couple of slides. Give yourself some slack, building contingency. If you need a thing from a partner on day 17, make sure you've asked for him to deliver it for you on day 14, because people are busy and things slip. So anticipate these delays, anticipate the risk, be on top of your partners and the other people that are working with you, and understand if they're on time, if they're not on time, before it happens. Partners come and go. This is business. You know, people have other priorities, things change. So you might need to have some reserve partners in place that you've spoken to. It's really important to work out the review and sign-off process with each of your partners, and again, particularly academic institutions. Is the person you're dealing with, that particular person in the company, allowed to send you that document, or does it have to go for sign-off by somebody else? Is that person allowed to give you that financial information, or does he have to go down to accounts and get the financial information? How long will that take? So work out the review and sign-off process within your partner organisations as well as your own. You know, are you going to go after board? Are you going to have to go up for board approval before you can press the submit process? How long will that take? The submission process is very, very important. Okay, so it isn't simply a question of putting some slides on an email and sending them on. There is a complicated process, the Innovation Funding Service application process. Don't leave it to the last minute, because it's going to take you a long time to fill in all those boxes and check that it's been uploaded and all those things. Give yourself time and have a backup plan. You know, if your laptop has a funny 5 minutes before the deadline and you've left it to the last minute, your consortium partners and your business are not going to be happy that all that time and effort has been wasted because you had a dodgy internet connection. So think about all the things that could possibly go wrong and have backups. Okay. Many years ago, when I worked for a big consultancy in the Midlands, and we did a lot of European grant applications, we would submit them via the internet, but we would also print them out, put them in a briefcase, and send a man on a plane to Brussels. That was the ultimate backup plan. I don't think you need to do that anymore, but a backup plan is a very useful thing. Next slide, please, Liz. Okay. Niche manga reference there from the Watchmen comic book. If you've never read it, you really should, but it's too late. Yeah, it really don't leave it till the last minute. There is a piece of data I've seen from Innovate UK that looks at the number of applications that come in an hour before, half an hour before, 10 minutes before, 5 minutes before the deadline. Everybody leaves it to the last minute, and people fail on that hurdle, and what a waste that would be. So here is an example of a timeline working backwards from the deadline. And we've worked out what stages have to be in there. We've worked out a bit about approval and sign off. We've worked out about getting the consortia brought in, and we've written a plan that works for our application. Yeah, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I would always recommend that you start sitting down and writing an example bid timetable that all your consortia are bought into, and that buy-in is really important. They've got to realise what they've got to do and when they've got to do it and what will happen if they don't. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, you know what you want from this process. Have you worked out what your partners want from this process? Particularly, have you worked out how important it is to them? This innovation is absolutely vital to you, but if you're working with a big partner, how important is it to them? If you're working with an academic institution that's got an awful lot of things going on and is very well funded, how important is it to them? The likelihood is that if you're small and they're big, it's less important. Oops, what happened there? There we go, brilliant. It's less likely to be right in the core of their thinking. Okay, so work out what they need, what they want, and what they're constrained to doing, and recognise that you're an SME and they're not sometimes. A thing that's worked quite well in the past for me is to write down, not a contract, not a legally binding thing, not a thing that you need to go and get lawyers involved in, but just on a piece of paper, what it is that each of the partners commits to doing. Okay, What are they going to do? When are they going to do it? How the money's going to work? Who's going to be responsible for submissions and all those kinds of things. So we're writing down some pretty obvious things just so that we all understand the same obvious, okay? And then get them to sign it, okay? And that's a really good test. If you say to them, right, we're going to do a bid application together, we're all going to be partners, here's the partner charter, please sign here, and they don't, that tells you something straight away. Yeah, and I've seen that work really, really well. And it flushes out people who are along for the ride and are a bit interested, but they'd rather you do all the work and get the application in, and they're not really committed to the process. So consider that. That works quite well. Next slide, please. So again, the detail, the boring detail of the submission process. Now, I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but it's so important. Understand exactly what has to happen, what documents have to be where, what documents have to be at what stage, and signed off by whom. Yeah, understand and map out, write it down, draw a flow chart, everything you must do to get this bid submitted. Work out exactly who is responsible, yeah, exactly who is pressing what buttons. That's incredibly important. Imagine having worked on a bid application for months and the last document you needed, wasn't there. Yeah, or I thought you were going to submit it. I thought you were going to press the button. It has happened. It really has. If you don't map it out and work out who's doing what, this kind of thing can happen. Do it early. Yeah. Say to yourself, I'm going to submit it the day before the deadline. Yeah. 2 days before the deadline. Give yourself some space. And again, have a backup. Have your documents stored somewhere secure. Have a spare computer. Have a spare internet connection. Know what you're going to do before the worst case scenario happens. Brilliant. Next slide, please. Okay. Am I doing this, Liz?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, brilliant. So imagine we've written the perfect bid, and imagine we've worked out the submission process and we've actually got to the button on time and it's in, okay? Now it's going to be printed out and it's going to be read by human beings, okay? And these human beings are going to assign marks against each of the categories, and the marks they assign are going to be whether you get through or whether you don't, okay? So wouldn't it be a good idea to know who's going to be reading your application? Wouldn't it be a good idea to understand their backgrounds and the level of technical detail they can get into? Because if you know that, if you can find that out, yeah, you can pitch your stuff at the right level of language, at the right level of technology. So that's really, really quite important. Some Innovate UK competitions, they're quite clear about who it is that's going to be your audience. And sometimes it's a little bit opaque. Again, this is getting under the skin of it, but KTN and the innovation lead and all these people, yeah, hints and tips from them. These people are going to have to read an awful lot of grant applications. I've been not on an Innovate UK thing, but I recently had to read 12, 13 grant applications in a short period of time. And it's difficult to retain all that information in your head. So if you can make your narrative brief but readable, okay, the adjudicators are going to have a much, much easier time of remembering your grant from all the other people. We've got the golden thread, we've got the compelling value proposition, and it was brief and it was readable and I could remember it, and it was good English. Okay, that's really more important than you think. Yeah, make it readable. Some competitions have a presentation. This is, if there is a presentation to a grant awarding panel, this is probably the most important bit of it, because the grant application process is a way of leveling the playing field so that everybody gets the same crack of the whip, regardless of their ability to present, their ability to talk, their agreeableness, their likableness, all that kind of thing. That's what the paperwork is there to level that field out. But if there's a presentation to a panel, there's your chance to unlevel that playing field again. There's the chance to do your Dragon's Den bit. There's your chance to do your real razzmatazz. Well, we did one of these for £1 million thing a couple of years ago, and there was an existing machine which was about as big as a fridge, and the new machine that the innovation was going to create was no bigger than a paperback book, and they had a 3D print of it, and it was like, there's the big one, there's the little one, it's going to be fantastic. And the guys forgot the 3D printed model of the little one. They forgot it. and I made them get in the car and drive 200 miles and come back later on and get it, because that was going to be the compelling argument. It was going to be really obvious to everyone on that panel what their innovation money was funding. We're going to go from a thing the size of a fridge to a thing the size of a book, and here it is. That's really, really important. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're on to the final stretch now. Top tips. Okay, understand your benefits. So we talked about features and benefits. Don't labour on the technology. Understand the call, exactly what it is that they are trying to fund. If you don't fit that, don't submit it, because you'll do all that work and you'll do the pass-fail criteria on the first question, fit to call. So don't, make sure it fits. A quality consortia that everybody can look at their websites, everyone can look at the company CVs, everyone can look at that and go, yeah, absolutely, they are credible. We understand them, they're good. Get your timetable written down, work backwards, agree who's doing what and who gets funded for what up front. Yeah, the consortia will fall apart on the money as much as anything else. Okay. Answer the question. Yeah, exam technique. Remember when you were doing your GCSEs, your O-levels or whatever? Yeah, exam technique is really, really important. Understand the question. Read it, think about it, go away, read it again. And then maybe ask someone else, did I answer the question? Because quite often people just want to write down all their stuff. They want to fill that box with words. And they want to tell everyone about how great their invention is. But is that the question at that section of the application they were actually asking? Establish a narrative arc. Tell a good story. Tell a good, memorable story. That if you fund me this, I'm going to do this. This will be the result, and look at all the benefits. You know, it's a really straightforward narrative arc. Nobody can proofread their own work. Nobody can do that. Okay, you will get word blind. You'll be staring at the same things over and over again for days, and there'll be spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, and bad English in there that you simply cannot see yourself. So get somebody else to proofread, okay, always. And then submission is an individual responsibility. Exactly who is going to press that button and when are they going to press it? Yeah, it's the worst thing to drop the ball right at the end. Next slide, please. So top tips 2, do not go in cold. By that I mean, don't download the application form and start filling it in. That's not how you win a grant. The percentage of success, the success rate percentage of people that simply fill in grant applications cold is not even single figures percentages. It's dreadful. Okay, don't leave it to last minute. Don't major on the science, benefits, not features. Don't assume that everyone who said they would do a thing for you will do a thing for you. Don't assume all your partners are bought in. Don't hang the success of your company and your own future finances off the success or failure of an Innovate UK grant application. That would be a bad thing. There are lots of other ways of getting projects funded. Okay, there are lots of other ways of getting money into your business. There are lots of other ways of developing products. This is one. It's not the only one. If there's a presentation, yeah, don't rush it. Yeah, that's really, really important. And I'll say it again, don't leave it till the last minute. Yeah, you'll do yourself a massive disservice by getting it all clanged up towards the right hand end, up towards the last minute. Okay. A bit about the psychology of grant applications. Okay. There's probably a stat somewhere about the number of people that said, I will do an Innovate UK grant application, and they did it and they failed and they never did it again. A plague on all your houses. I'm not prepared to play this game anymore. Cost me a fortune in time and money and effort, and it didn't work. But it probably won't work. Okay. I mentioned earlier on there are serial grant applicants. These are people where it does work and they can make it work, and they do it again and again and again because they've got their process nailed. Okay. So it probably won't work. Be prepared for that, but be psychologically prepared for that failure the first time. Okay, it's a learned skill. You can learn all this kind of stuff. You're frightened of doing it because you've got perfectly normal mammalian fear of rejection. Everybody gets that the first few times, but don't worry because it's not real. Okay, it's just you put an application in, you didn't get funded, you get a load of feedback, okay, and you can resubmit it. Okay, so be resilient. That's important. By filling in the application form, by going to the launch event, by meeting the innovation lead, by meeting the partners, you can get into an iterative dialogue with the funder rather. Okay. What that means is again, there's a psychological thing called the availability error, where people become familiar with the thing and therefore they think it's good. I've not explained that very well. If there are any psychologists, they can explain it better. But if you keep meeting the same guys from Innovate UK, and EEN and KTN, you become a known quantity. Oh, we know that company. We understand these people. We know what, and they'll come to you and they say, oh, well, that call wasn't really the thing for you, but the next one will be. Or they'll actually start to change the things they fund to fund the industrial partners that they know, because that's part of the innovation lead's job, is to go out into the community and find out who needs what. Okay, so get into that dialogue with Innovate UK and all their representatives, because it'll pay you dividends in the future. Next slide, please. Okay, and it's a plan, okay? It's just a plan and it'll change, okay? And don't get upset because you wrote this wonderful plan and then a consortium partner changed, or there was a delay or an extension or whatever it was. It's just the plan. It is important to have one. Next slide, please. Are you doing this one, or am I still rattling on?
Yeah, I can talk on this one. So there is other support out there. We put this in here as a nice reminder for you. Don't forget about R&D tax credits. Don't forget about the patent box. There are basically government support that helps reduce your tax bill when you're working in R&D and innovation. There's some links there as well, both to New Anglia LEP and to the Patent Office, who can help you with an IP health check. The other thing that's on the go at the moment is the Help to Grow management programme. Government's funding 90% of the cost of that, and you can get lots of great training and support and mentoring through that programme. So our contact details are in the slides as well. We will move to questions, and I'm going to hand over to Laura just to finish us off.
Thanks so much, Liz and Colm. It's been a really interesting conversation. All the information you put forward has been so useful. I know we've run over a little bit because it's great to see your enthusiasm to share all that information, and I thought that was really worth giving to our audience today. We have got a few questions, so we've only got 5 minutes left on the session to talk about those, but any questions we don't get round to answering, please put your questions to the email address there on the slide, and we can get back to you at a later date on those. So just sort of, I think, starting to have a look at the questions. We'll pick the top ones. What's the typical success rate for Innovate UK bids? I don't know who. Colm, you've probably got some information around that, I think.
I can answer that. So if it depends, okay. But if we look at Smart Awards, I think first-time applicants, their success rate is a bit less than 10%. But if they resubmit, having taken all the feedback and all that kind of thing, it's up around 25–30%. Okay, roughly.
Thank you.
But it depends.
Absolutely. How long does it take to write a good bid? Your chart suggests 1 week, but that doesn't really seem long enough. A question came in, and that's through the Innovation Grant Mentoring Project. We can help you write your bid, coach you on writing a bid with our bid writing coaches. On the Innovation Grant Mentoring Project, I'd just like to sort of add that we like to engage with businesses. You don't have, before you've identified a competition you'd like to apply for. That then gives us the time to work with you, with our mentors and coaches, and to use the hours which we have available for you to the full advantage to help give you that training for a successful bid. But Colm, Liz, what would you suggest in terms of writing that bid? How long does it take?
It depends. If it's an APC thing, a multi-million-pound APC grant, Advanced Propulsion Centre, it could be months. Yeah, if it's a young innovators grant, it can be pretty straightforward. It could be a couple of days. It simply depends. I think it's the answer to that. It's on the size and the scale and the number of consortium partners and what you're trying to achieve. But no, you probably won't do many of them in a week.
And that was just first draft as well. So don't forget that first draft is one thing, but iteration and improvement is another. You need to create plenty of time for that.
Next one, how quickly is my product going to be on the market after the Innovate UK project? How do I judge that if my product is? How do I judge that if my product's not going to be fully developed?
Okay, so the answer is quite a while. The Innovate UK process is lengthy. So you'll submit the bid. You are highly unlikely to be starting the project for another 6 months after you've submitted. By the time Innovate have assessed it, then they'll send you out feedback with the approval. There's then a whole bunch of due diligence and project startup process to go through. So you're probably looking at 6 months before you even start the project. Then you've got the duration of the project. After the end of the project, it really depends on how far along the path to commercialisation you've got. So this is where I pinged it up very quickly, but the slide on technology readiness levels is useful. So it's helpful if you use the technology readiness level scale, which you can find online, to assess where you are now at the start of the project, where you intend to be at the end of the project. Realistically, most people overestimate how far along that scale things actually are, because that gives you an idea of how much is left to do afterwards. So you're still going to have to do things, unless you manage to do them in parallel, like getting your supply chains set up, getting manufacturing timescales nailed down and starting to flow. So it's another piece of string type of answer. It can be long, it can be short, but I would say don't expect to do anything quickly. If it's the sort of project that's suitable for Innovate UK, it will take a while.
Okay, thanks, Liz. I'll just answer one last question as we're sort of heading to right at the end of our session now. But the question was from Phil Warnock. Would companies who are looking to provide services into Norfolk but not based in Norfolk be eligible for the Innovation Grant Mentoring Project? So eligible businesses are businesses, they don't have to have a registered address in Norfolk or Suffolk, but they have to have a business base within Norfolk or Suffolk. So it is for businesses based in this area, and it's not for people who are looking to provide services, unfortunately. In terms of your support, but there will be other organisations which will be able to support you in your move towards innovation funding. Okay, the other questions we can go through afterwards and get back to the individuals that have asked the questions. If you have any further questions, please do email them to us on the econdev@norfolk.gov.uk address and register your interest in our support in the link there on the slide. Thank you very much for attending today, and hopefully look forward to engaging with those who would like to have support from the Innovation Grant Mentoring Project. And thank you very much to Liz and Colm. It's been a really good presentation, really informative, and we'll be sending out the recording and the slides. I'll also be sending out a survey on the event, so please do get back to me with information with that survey, as it really helps us plan our future events on the project and what sort of topics we pick to focus on in our webinars. But thank you very much, and look out for details of our next webinar, which we'll be scheduling towards the end of April. Thanks very much for your time. Goodbye.